Welcome to Complexity Medicine, Align and Design. Align and Design is an interactive group discourse, discussion, and dialogue whereby we seek to mutually explore and create a shared pattern language and an implied design thinking process as it relates to health design, leadership, implementation, and integration. Join us as we seek to understand and apply primary patterns and first principles of engagement in the development of systems of care, connection, as well as means towards physiological and ecological well-being at scale. I am artist Andy McClure, and this is Dr. William Sutherland, your hosts.
And here we are in week 5 of our Align and Design community discussion. And yes, and I think this is our first one that we've gotten together in spring. So we've got the spring sun, the end of the spring day, the last little bit of light. And we get the sense of both, the vitality of the day as it's starting to wane and the quality of the equanimity and the calmness of night as it's starting to come forth. And hopefully the quality of both of those energies will inform where we're going and what we're doing in this conversation here today. And all right. So where do we start today? I think when we look back to last week and the harvest of our last session or 2 weeks ago and what's come forth, I am both intrigued and humbled by the gentle processes that are already starting forward in the feedback that I'm getting. Both the internal feedback from the local feedback in my own life and the feedback from some people of the people in the community. And so where I want to start today is that I'm actually hearing from people that these things that we've been calling health koans are actually working. They're actually working in their life. They're not working as in a solution to problems, because that's not what this health design thinking has ever been. They're working as in these very questions and holdings are working them. They're challenging them. They're a kind of catalyst in the system that is getting people to see things in a new and different way. So we go back to our first one. What is health? But I think that one is a tricky one because you can get, again, if we compare that to are you on the outside, inside koan? We recognize that can be a dangerous question. So when we look now and we change that slightly and we say, how is health working me right now? Where is health in this moment? How do I see in this moment of great vitality, where is health? Maybe that's easy, but what about in this moment of struggle, or in this moment of malaise, or in this moment of low energy, or in this moment of where we're trouble finding our resonance and coherence? Where is health? How is it showing it? How is it working us? When people are starting, I think that's a very useful koan in the hard moments of life to help reframe and say, we are never free of health. It's always with us. There's never a health empty zone. Everything that's happening is working in the service of health. And we'll go there today with where today's koan is going. The notion of acting to know. I've actually had direct feedback by some of the community where they're actually using that phrase, coming back to me and saying, I've really been working to act to know. I've been trying these new things, not knowing what would come out of it. I've been putting these things into motion. And out of that, there's this sense of courage and bravery, right? It's like, where was that, maybe before where there was hesitancy or uncertainty or ambiguity, and how do I step into that? This notion of act to know is all of a sudden infusing us with a new courage, right? That we can step forward in without knowing, but knowing that action will bring us into a state of learning and will help us to calibrate and come closer, to, whatever the state called health is. The notion of outside versus inside. Choose your preposition, your preposition. I think that's giving people a sense of, am I in this conversation? Am I in this dialogue? Am I actually participating with the other, the other aspects of my own being, the others in the room, these otherings that are in the world. I had a really interesting conversation with a patient this week, and I said, it's really interesting how so often my patients will show up in actual or virtual space, and it looks like we're together, but we're not. They haven't actually recognized me in the room because they're in an about position. They're going to tell me about their week, about their life, about their suffering, about what they think that I've said. But we're learning together. And I do the same. I get into an about mode when I get this idea that I'm the physician in a certain way. And we're learning to actually drop that away and fall into within so we can meet each other. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're in this room too. And I'm in this room too. And the 9 of us are in this room here today together. That we're in, here we are within. And so I think actually that's a very difficult one. This about within, in my mind, might be the most subtle, despite how obvious it seems on the surface, for us to start to make the shift that we're actually within people. We're moving from within the system. And within means that you are in interaction. In this moment, I am with you and you are with me. And the words that are coming forth from my mouth are not rehearsed. They're not pre-thought. They're not a product of what I want it to bring today. They're coming forth within the shared interaction. And not just this moment, but all of the moments that have brought us here. And then last week, Invert Inversions. And maybe Andy can speak a little bit to this, because I remember 2 or 3 days after Invert Inversions, Andy on a call said to me, "Damn you, Bill. Damn you with your Invert Inversions." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I'm seeing them everywhere in my life and how I've participated in them and how I'm seeing them everywhere in places I haven't participated. But because others are in their inversion, I have to deal with it. Damn you. It was easier not knowing those inversions existed." And then he shared some conversation changes, so again, there's that word calibration, bringing those inversions to the attention from a within position in the shared interaction, stepping into these actions of how do we shift this? Because I don't know how to shift an inversion. Just because I told you we need to invert them doesn't mean I know how to do that or what we should do or have the knowledge of that. We've got to act to figure out how to shift those things. Michael, as he came in, I wanted to just saying, I was speaking about how people have been feeding back to me that they have been using these koans in their life, that they have been showing up in real and meaningful ways. And so, that's where I want to come to today. That's the harvest, that invert inversions. Really, there was something so tangible about that one. That one sort of for me gets the blood boiling, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, because when there's inversions, there's pathology, there's injustice, there's stickiness, there's stuckness, and I want to start to move from out of that, into these broader notions. But again, what it just made me realize is that all of these koans live in a web of interconnectivity. I will always remember what my patient had said to me about another who used to, before pre-COVID, had a Wednesday night therapy group that inspired this actually in many ways. And she said to me, she goes, Dr. Sutherland, you talk about something different every Wednesday. And this is like 4 years in. And I realized that you are always talking about the exact same thing. And so it is with these koans. We're going to keep introducing new ones. There's going to be inadvertent ones that slip in the course of the discussion over these 2 hours. They're going to be coming at us constantly. Throughout, you're going to start to make up your own koans. You're going to be hearing them ring in your mouth, ring from your mouth, ring in your ears, and you'll recognize that you'll start to create your own of these. And there'll be little nuggets that you live by in the moment, the hour, the day, the week, the month. This will become part of your own creative process, and you'll realize they're all parts of these themes pointing to this thing we can never hold, that we can never speak of, that we can never grasp, that we are held within, called health, called wholeness, called beauty, called wisdom, called life, called love, that shows in all of these different ways. Anyway, that's my harvest. And that's the that was the ending of 2 weeks ago, and what then was sort of moving and stirring within me. And that's what's brought me to this moment. And that's what I want to launch with today. But before I share today's koan, I want to send that to Andy. And the thing is, Andy, here, we love to be very candid. Andy today said, I've prepared nothing. I have no idea what to say today. I've come in with nothing. And we say this in a way, though, that's unapologetic. We actually say it to clear any air of resistance or stickiness that we have on it. We just say it as a truth. Today I have nothing. Now, today I have nothing does not mean that we will do nothing or that nothing will come forward. It's just the honest start. And I love that he came in with nothing, because whatever this call is that I've put out here in this first 15 minutes, and I want to see, and again, it's not just Andy, although I'm going to get Andy to start it off. I'd like to see what's all stirring in you. I'd like to see what's all moving in you in response. Call, response, call, response. If we do it right, it feels like, gospel music with the grannies, call and response, the riches of voices and tone. All right, Andy, in your response.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for letting everyone know I didn't come prepared with anything. The not knowing is actually the thing. So I'll steal a little of your thunder. Today's koan, we're going to talk about fixing, helping, and serving. And Bill's going to, I think, introduce that and talk a little bit about what that means. But so we had a different koan last night, and then I talked to Bill on the phone, and he said, "Oh no, we're going to do this one." So I woke up this morning and thinking, like, how am I going to approach this, and what am I going to add to this, and what am I going to say? And literally for most of the day, I couldn't think of anything to add to it. There was just nothing was coming up. And I started to feel around 4:00 that stress, which is like that edges on anxiety whenever you're about to perform or you go on stage or anything, that's there. And then of course, it dawned on me that I was doing the inversion. So I was thinking, I don't know what to say. And I was trying to fix that instead of serving that. And the moment that I realized that what I needed to do was to be in that not knowing, then the answer came to me right away. And I knew what it is that I wanted to say. but it was a lovely reminder again of yes, how this practice trickles into your conscious subconscious relationship. And so and also how just sort of going back to that position of releasing control and accepting that being available and being open is all that's actually required in order to grasp this whole. It just kind of comes back again. So, Bill, I was cursing you for the inversions, but I'm also, thanking you for the inversions because they gave me today a place to start and a way to acknowledge again what we often talk so much about, which is just the real value of that genuine not knowing and being in that position of vulnerability and tension, which is so beautifully productive. So there's my counter.
Lovely. Lovely. And so in this moment, if Andy and I are doing my job right, that's funny. I say, if Andy and I are doing my job right, I somehow collapsed us into a single individual. The Andy, this amorphous entity called Bill Andy or Andy Bill. We will have touched a chord. And I just think about that metaphor, right? A chord is obviously musical, right? We've touched a chord. Like, think about the harp, think about the guitar, right? Are we in accord? Are we in discord? Do we find accordance, right? And by the way, when I say we touched a chord, it doesn't mean it's an accord or a resonant chord. It could be discord. It could be bringing and stirring something. I don't care. But but the main thing is we've touched a chord. If we've touched nothing, then Andy and I need to recalibrate. And so in this moment of the sharing, I want to do a quick, so first off, feel if something is moving in you in all of this and all that it has been and all that it's opening to. Feel something moving in you. How, again, here's that metaphor, bodily this time. How have you been touched? How have you been inspired, right? We're always ended up in the metaphors of embodiment. And I want to do a quick go around. And then I want to do a more open go around. But this and again, if everybody in a moment can just unmute, it's a 1-sentence commitment. It's nothing more. It's going to be, this is what I'm going to ask of you. So the original koan weeks ago was, what is health? But again, it's bulky. It gets us into problems. You very easily fall into I'm moving my right hand, which means into my left hemisphere. We're trying to grasp onto what is health. But I want to make it more beautiful, that one. I'd like to make it a little more aesthetic, right? So I want to change the question, right? So for me, the question, I'm going to rephrase it for this moment, right? What is health's texture right now? That's what I'd like to phrase with a question for me. But each of you, I'm going to do a quick go around. Don't overthink it, right? This is that act to know. Be in your not knowing. Change what is health into a new variation. We're in the world of variants, right? COVID variants. Let's have variations on our koans. Let's have health variants, koan variants as they spread out into the world. Andy, change what is health into a variant that makes sense and is in accord with you right now.
Olga texted me today. She was having difficulty studying because her floor of her room is covered with plant seedlings that she has put all these sunflower seeds and strawberry seeds and everything. And she was having trouble focusing on her studying while observing this dirt in her room. And like, for me, that just felt like spring and life and hope and, like what a perfect combination, learning and planting seeds at the same time. So planting seeds of ideas in your head at school, but also then literally planting and partaking and caretaking for and observing and watching the actual growth of nature happening at the same time. It should be a required thing of homework. You should have to plant seeds at the beginning of each semester and watch them grow and tend to them as you're tending to your learning. It was beautiful.
Turn it into a koan. Give it to me as a question.
What seeds are we planting?
What seeds are we planting? That's Andy's health koan. He even dropped the word health, and yet it's there. All right, all of you, I just want one question, one koan, one sentence, one variation on what is health. Twist it, turn it, tip it, flip it. Do whatever you need to make what is health a living question for you right now. Any takers? Don't overthink. This is a moment to act, to know. You'll find your courage.
Go ahead. What connections are we making?
What connections are we making? Now, Bayan, beautiful. Could you say it in a way that you can hear it though, right? Not just like with flat, right? Say it in a way that you can hear it. Try it once more.
What connections are we making?
What connections are we making? What connections are we making? Great. Chris, I saw that your mute went off. Do you have one there?
Yes. What color is your health?
what color? Now, can you change it to what color is my health and make it your own?
Yes. What color is my health?
And in this moment, what color, Chris, is your health?
I feel blue.
Blue.
Not because I feel not because I feel sad, but blue, more like the clear blue sky, like there is no horizon. Everything is infinite.
Beautiful, Chris. I've got a prescription for you. Are you ready for this? After
I'm ready.
we're said and done, you can all write this down. You can all write this down. I want you to go on YouTube, put in the keywords Veggie Tales and Mrs. Blueberry singing blue ooh, blue ooh, blue ooh. Andy, sorry, go ahead, jump in.
I was just going to say, I think it might be nice to ask Baron if she's available to say something about blue, because as an artist, whenever I hear blue, I think, well, there are so many variations of blue, so many qualities to the color blue. And I don't know, Perrin, if you're there, do you have anything to connect with that?
Perrin, speak true to blue.
Well, that's sort of putting me on the spot. It is one of my favorite colors, and you're right. There are so many different tones of it. And I think, turquoise is really kind of like, I guess I'll connect that with a koan, because I think Andy was, sort of talking about spring in life, which I think is very much, what we typically associate with health. But then I was also thinking, we can think about, the cycles of the seasons, and how, kind of going through those cycles is also, there's something about like going through these sort of, these kind of cyclical processes that is important as a process of health. And so then to tie that to blue, I think, you can associate, blue with all of these different, cycles of the seasons as well. Like, that kind of, kind of like the midnight blue of, maybe like January. And then, sort of growing into kind of like that bright sky blue of June. And I think you can, maybe work through those, you can kind of work through those colors and use them as a way to, I don't know, bring you into a different place in your own sort of process of health.
Give us your koan, Perrin.
The koan?
Your koan today.
Yeah. So I guess, what cycles are we moving through?
What cycles are we moving through? What cycles am I moving through? What cycles are we moving through? And when a cyclone shows up in that cycle, how will you be moved?
Can I ask a strange, obscure question? Perrin, do you own a piece of turquoise?
I do, yes, lots of it.
And do you have a piece that is important to you that somebody gave to you?
Yeah, actually, a friend of my uncle's gave me a really beautiful necklace from Africa, I think it was.
Do you remember the last time you wore it?
It was probably a really long time ago. It's a really amazing necklace, big and chunky pieces of turquoise. So, yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there. I think you should put the necklace on tomorrow or soon. I think you need to pull it out.
Pull it out, dust it off, and bring it into this new spring cycle.
This new spring cycle. The stone wants to be born.
It wants to be worn. It wants to be born. All right. We got a living koan, the living stone, turquoise from Chris's blue. And so it spreads. And this is a very different question than what is health. And yet it's the same question. Anybody else? Any takers? Any more brave souls that want to share their variation? Michael, jump in. Oh, I see hands. I see my wife waving her. Michael.
Can you hear me okay?
Michael.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
I'm basically asking myself, because we've had a lot of health issues in myself and my family, what positive outcome might I see? Because I'm thinking of what Dr. Sutherland's talked about quite a bit lately, and that is, instead of me just focusing on all the negative things and some of the difficult scenarios we're dealing with, my daughter in particular, her health situation, I'm seeing some positive things come out, and it's easy for me to be trapped in not seeing those. It's easy for me just to look at lurching from crisis to crisis, but what I'm doing instead is I'm trying to pick out or notice that. So, for example, today, most of you will be too young to know this phrase, but I was dipsy doodling along the line. It's an old Montreal Canadian phrase from the 70s. I was playing some hockey with my granddaughters in the basement. I was too bloody tired to play, but my spirit wanted to play. And so I went into the proper mood, and there's a little bit of magic, even though it was brief. We played hockey, and then we went outside looking for chipmunks and squirrels, and we could feel the cold wind and some leaves blowing, and I felt very alive, and I wasn't focusing on anything to do with what doctors are saying or nurses are saying. Just, I'm in the moment with my grandkids, and that's all that was important to me.
So what you're saying, Michael, is if you find the proper mood, you can then find the proper mode.
Yeah.
But don't make an inversion by trying to find the proper mode looking for a mood.
Yeah.
Find the mood, and the mode will follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find your joy, and it will show itself how to be in the world.
Yes. Yes. I would agree with that heartily.
All right. We have a Koan.
Can I give you
Lisa.
Can I give you a hockey inversion? She's busy. Can I give you a quick hockey inversion? I was playing men's hockey, and I said one day in the dressing room, I like playing hockey to stay in shape. And one of the guys across from me looked at me, and he looked at me like I had just, blasphemed in the chapel. And he said, "Oh, I stay in shape to play hockey."
That's the inversion. And Andy, there's actually
the inversion.
There's actually a deeper holism and a cybernetic direct self-referential loop. You know what that is? It's, I play hockey to play hockey. Lisa, can you hear us? What's your koan? What's your what is health statement, question, moment of this moment?
I thought that about my senses and like just immersing myself in them. So my koan would be, how do I dive into my senses to really feel alive? Like sometimes you just shut off everything, so you're just moving through the life. But how do I really dive into my senses at all moments?
There is a direct way to have that experience.
Oh yes.
Oh yes. And I'm reminded of diving into Lake Huron on a cold September day.
Oh yeah.
That is nothing but diving into one's senses. And it's such that you may have lost your senses to even do it, and you'll certainly come out in a nonsensical way having done it.
Yes. Definitely You'd certainly know you were alive.
You will know you are alive. All right. This is just play. We haven't even started yet. Anybody else, any last koans, their variations of what is health for them today, right now, in this moment, in a way that makes sense, that we can dive in, no matter what color we be, blue or otherwise, as we find the mood for the mode, and we work our way through all of this, planting our seeds, connecting with ourselves and others. Any last takers?
I'll go ahead.
Jump in.
My koan is, where the hell is my moss?
Your what?
My moss.
Your moss?
I want to grow moss.
Where is your moss?
So I went out to the forest the other day, and I was looking for moss because I want to grow moss.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked all around the forest, seeing a whole bunch of patches of moss I'd never seen before. But none of them felt like my moss. So I want to know, where the hell is my moss?
Mm-hmm. Andy, is there a Scottish sea shanty in there? Where is my moss? I think there is.
Your moss is where it is. That's what my grandfather would say. He'd say, your moss is where it is. And where it is not where you are looking. But when you are looking where it is, that will be your moss.
You sound like my grandmother.
It's a variation on his body lies over the ocean. Or Bonnie. It was not body.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's my body. Maybe it's my Bonnie. Maybe my Bonnie body. You'll see. How does that rest of that go, Annie? Annie. Now
my Bonnie lies over.
We're in a fluid mode here. I just changed Andy from my Bonnie lad to my Bonnie lass. I made him an Annie. All right, here we go. Moving forward. All right.
Oh, can I add something?
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yes.
Dearest daughter.
I can hear myself on mom's phone, so I'm going to run to the other room.
It's okay. It's a lesson in
it's
feedback.
Making scary echoey noises in there.
It's a lesson in feedback.
I guess when I think of health, for me, there's like a big relationship with like cohesion. And I feel like the more separations that we make, like, oh, this is my mental health, my physical health, or this is my work life, my personal life, the more unhealthy I feel, because I just feel torn between so many things that all feel time consuming and just as worthy of my time. So I guess if I had to make it a question, it would be something like, how can I live a cohesive life in a segregated world?
What if it was the opposite? What if that was an inversion? Last week we talked about inverting inversions. And what if actually you were living a segregated existence in a cohesive world? And then the koan becomes
what's happening, yeah. But
and then the koan becomes
back to the cohesion.
That's right. And the koan becomes, am I? Are you?
I knew you were going to say that.
I got to get Kung Fu Panda in whenever I can.
Yeah, every time Dad and I have conversations about wisdom, we always end up quoting Kung Fu Panda. So
always, I'm striving to be Master Oogway, but sadly, I think I'm more like Kung Fu Panda's duck father. All right, here we are. A go around. Numan, I know you came in a little late. Sean, real simple. What is health? We decided it was just way too abstract. And we want to twist it, turn it, tip it, flip it. If you were to come up a living statement, one that was going to help you stay taut and loose at the same time, how would you twist what is health into a new living koan for yourself right in this moment? One word, one sentence, one story, however form you want to share it.
Phil, can you repeat that question? I froze a bit.
Oh, right. No, that's important because, we freeze and there's blockages, and we know this from the manual medicine world. So yeah, we'll heat them up a little bit. We decided that this what is health is an important but often very cold and easily abstractable question. It's an abstractable koan that maybe can create more damage than good. And so if you were to twist it and wrestle it and hug it and kiss it and move it up in some other different way, and you took that question, what is health, and made it into a living question that embodied your health in this moment, or in, around, about, that you were to make a statement or a story, whatever it comes out in whatever form, that is living for you right now and maybe won't be in a minute from now, how would you make it?
I've got to give that some thought.
What if you didn't have a chance to give it thought? What if instead of giving it thought, you gave it movement? You just put it into action. You trusted that if you said one word, the next words would come.
One word would be inspiration.
Inspiration, and the word after inspiration is what? Don't think. It comes naturally.
Expiration.
Yes. So we have an inspiration. And perhaps the question is, when is our inspiration and expiration date? And I don't mean a date like an ending, but I mean like a date in a gathering where we get to actually meet each other and have a romance.
Are you asking me another question?
Oh, no, I don't know. Am I?
No.
But I love it. The inspiration is always followed by the expiration, which is followed by
another inspiration.
The inspiration. That sounds like the workings of a koan, Numan.
Right. You know, if I were to ask, you know, what does health mean to me? It's what inspires me. You know, what is it that inspires me?
Yeah, what inspires you?
That's as simple as I can make it.
Yeah. What is inspiring me? And can we make it a now? What is inspiring me, breathing me, opening me up now to that thing? You know, whether it be air on land or water for the fish, you know, or some other numinous non-tangible that we all float in some way, in connection. Sean.
I have a story.
Yes.
So I decided to not go to Costco this evening to procure my food. I decided to go to the local, there's a small store called the Dundurn Market. It's a lot more expensive, but they were playing some dance music, and the cashier and I were bopping as there was, you know, I got some stewing beef, I got some cowboy bacon, I got some fresh baked bread, and so I'm glad I made that choice. The dancing itself in that moment with the cashier was worth the extra price. I mean, it was of a scale. I think there was something about the scale of that allowed for that encounter, and I feel better for it.
So you got your food, your spiritual food, and your real food at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And before everybody else came online, we were talking about double bubble gum. You got a double, we got a bubble. There's some inspiration in all of that. And when it pops, a little expiration.
Sean, I noticed you haven't stopped bopping yet.
That's it. Sean's popping. Popping and popping. Alex, we're all taking inspiration from you. You notice it's a contagion. I've been finding my way into moving.
I've been yelling at my screen already today, like just on mute, yelling at you guys. It's good energy tonight. Good energy.
All right. Let's bring in tonight's koan. One last thing, though. I actually do, and I want to not rush us because we will get here. I did have one other one, and this is quick. So remember, what are the koans today? What is health?
I'm in a meeting.
It's not for your medicine, okay? we'll keep. Remember, your house will be on the recording. So remember today, what is health? Act to know, inside, outside, choose your preposition, invert inversions. Has anybody felt those, changing them, moving them, sculpting them, giving them new perspective, new perception, new action? Can you give any, can you have just overall, like, is it starting to change you? Do you have examples? Is there anybody that would like to share one or two before we move on to today's koan? Evidence of change. Michael.
I just have a simple example. There are some very needy adolescents at a local high school, and the principal has asked if there would be any adult mentors to listen to these students and some of their dilemmas. I had suggested to the principal, we just act now. We just, start listening to them and see where it goes. I mean, my old self would have said, well, we have to sit down and have 6 meetings and then decide how to build an infrastructure and, move in sequence A, B, C, and then see where we go from there. But what I want to do now is invert that and say, well, let's just talk to these kids now rather than waiting till September and see what they need, see what kind of discussions they're involved in. I'm a retired high school teacher, so I'd be very comfortable in listening to them. And if they need a health professional, I'll send it to the people who are professional. So that's just a simple example with the high school people.
Lovely. How was the principal with it?
Well, she was a little bit surprised, but I said, why wait? I said, I agree with you from previous comments that these students are hurting now. Why wait till the summer? We both agreed that during Christmas, March break, or used to be March break, and summer, students are extra anxious because they don't want to leave. There is security in being with the schoolmates and their chums. And when they leave, they don't feel any kind of regulation at home. It's rather chaotic. So why not start now? I said, rather than wait till September. She said she'd consider that idea. So I will give a gentle reminder in the near future that let's begin and see how it falls into place. As long as we have the right heart and the right intentions, the infrastructure will come. That is a definite shift on how I would have thought in the past.
Lovely. Perrin.
Yeah. Well, the one that I would add that, you haven't necessarily listed it, but spoke about it earlier, this idea of today I have nothing. I think it's also really important to then sort of flip that into the statement of I'm enough as myself, right? And I think that this is, really important when we think about, building more authentic communities, right? That we don't feel obligated to kind of play to a system and sort of perform to a system based on what it's, kind of demanding of us, or, the expectations that these sort of superficial expectations that might be imposed. So.
Great. Thank you. Olga, you had 2 hands up a moment ago.
Yeah, that was an accident. I just want to say that these words have been sitting with me for a while now, because of course they've come up in Andy's classes and I've read your book. So they've had a while to sit inside of me and do their work. And I don't really have a specific example that that comes to mind right now. And I don't believe that these things come through in specific examples. It's more of a gradual, at least for me, it's more of a gradual and persistent change in your relationships, and more importantly, the stories that you tell. And our lives are nothing but a collection of stories. And that is very important. And that has been changing, at least for me.
Very good. And there is I love the idea of this is a Zen story. There's two in Japanese Zen. There's two major traditions. There's Rinzai and Soto, and of course, this is not absolute, but there is this sort of tension, right? One which is the notion of realization in a singular moment, right? Realization now, right? Satori Kensho, boom. And then there's the idea of the gentle becoming and changing and transformation into our realization, which is so slow and subtle and gentle and almost still as to be not perceived until such time as all of a sudden you are, that somehow you have changed, you have transformed in that. And you know, I hope we find both of that in here, right? That we find those moments of lightning bolts, of ahas, that we see ourselves and others in the world differently in a relational way in a moment. And that slowly this starts to work us in ways that we don't even perceive, but others over time see the change in us and how we're participating in the world. I love that.
Like the growth of a seedling.
Like the growth of a seedling. Thank you. Bringing it back around to your floor right now with all of its seedlings. All right. Before we get into today's koan, anybody else?
Maybe I'll just read this. This is from Richard Wagamis Ember's book. Seems to be appropriate. Every relationship needs a healthy dollop of spontaneity to keep it clicking. Nothing needs to be rehearsed or practiced. There doesn't have to be a plan. One day you jump up and go, spinning into rambunctious, off-the-cuff frolic. You don't check in, tweet, email, or text while you're gone. There's no way to carry a cell phone on a skinny dip in the ocean, and you'd have to stop the wild energy to Instagram it. Freedom is letting go of bounds and barriers and hurling yourself into the adventure of living. That's how you build a book of moments, a love, a friendship, a family.
Say it, brother. Say it.
Uh-huh. That's it. I felt that. Bring the poetry, everybody. Bring the poetry. You know, there's it. Here's what we should all do. We should all look to be, you know, here's what we should do. We should look scholarly, that we have a set of poems, like books that we could just reach to in these moments, right? You know, that's just like, you know, felt, random, memorized, drawn, you know, that wouldn't be a bad thing to be warrior poets. You know, we could, tonight, let's all make a commitment to become a family of warrior poets. Well, that would be something. All right, here's tonight's koan.
Woe pose.
Woe pose. Woe pose for those in the know. I love it. Woe pose. All right, tonight's koan. This is courtesy of the palliative care physician and author Rachel Remen. Remen spelled R-E-M-E-N. Wonderful reflections from a life of, and I think I may have brought this up previously, but tonight is our koan. Helping, fixing, serving. 3 ways to create the world you'll participate in. Helping, fixing, serving. 3 ways in which you create the world you participate in. And that's why I just want a little change. 3 ways in which you create the world you will. And if I put in inevitably participate in, you don't escape this perception. So helping, fixing, serving, I want you to recognize that they're a type of specific action. They're not a doing. They're a way of seeing. They're a perception. They're a perceptual action, not a movement doing action. And that's to correct an inversion, because most people think helping is what you do, fixing is what you do, and serving is what you do. But I'm telling you up before I even read you to the distinctions here. It's not what you do, it's what you perceive. And perception is an action. It's active, right? We perceive, and through that perception, we create. All right, this is what Rachel Remen has to say for us. Service is not the same as helping. Helping is based on inequality. It is not a relationship between equals. When you help, you use your own strength to help someone with less strength. It's a one-up, one-down relationship. And people feel this inequality. When we help, we may inadvertently take away more than we give, diminishing the person's sense of self-worth and self-esteem. Now, when I help, I am very aware of my own strength, but we don't serve with our strength. We serve with ourselves. We draw from all our experiences. Our wounds serve, our limitations serve, even our darkness serves. The wholeness in us serves the wholeness in the other and the wholeness in life. Helping incurs debt. When you help someone, they owe you. But service is mutual. When I help, I have a feeling of satisfaction. But when I serve, I have a feeling of gratitude. Serving is also different to fixing. We fix broken pipes. We don't fix people. When I set about fixing another person, it's because I see them as broken. Fixing is a form of judgment that separates us from one another. It creates distance. So fundamentally, helping, fixing, and serving are ways of seeing life. When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. And when you serve, you see life as whole. When we serve in this way, we understand that this person's suffering is also my suffering, that their joy is also my joy, and that the impulse to serve arises naturally. Our natural wisdom and compassion present itself quite simply. A server knows that they're being used and has the willingness to be used in the service of something greater. We may help or fix many things in our life, but when we serve, we are always in the service of wholeness. I'll try to post the entirety of this on the YouTube link under the description so we can find it. And on our blog site, when we put it up, I will post that along with it. The place that I want us to think about is actually a little more abstract because I think we have resistance to necessarily seeing this closer in our life, or we're blind to it. You know, our helping and fixing has become so habitual that it's become a blind spot. But let's look at the world as a whole right now, right? This thing called Earth. Earth, all of our relations on it, all of the animals, all of the plants, the sixth great extinction. The nations on the planet, whether they be in unity with each other or in disharmony. The strife that we see going on in the environment, politically, economically, and in all the other facets of human engagement and interaction. It can seem like a pretty bleak picture at times, and I can only speak for myself, but it actually gets me down in a tremendous way. I mean, it is an existential avalanche at times that I don't know how to deal with inside of myself in a felt sense. And my first urge in all of this, right, when I think about the world, and I hear this around is, you know, what can I do to help? How do we fix this, right? How do we solve these problems that are happening, right? We all desperately want to participate in this time. And yet our most common sense of how we would do that is in fixing and helping. But what's amazing is that this is a great moment because it actually defies our ability to fix or help. Things seem so utterly broken in the world now that we go, it's unfixable. It destroys the notion that we can fix it. It is bigger than our ability to conceive of that which we can fix. And help, well, we feel helpless. We're not the one up here. We're the one down. What can we do, right? We're going into a lockdown again on Saturday, right? COVID phase 3, right? Like this is just one small part of our world right now, right? What do we do? What can we do? And if we can't help or fix, then often what we do is we go crazy, right? We go crazy in our response to try to shore up something, to have, like Chicken Little, the sky is falling. And by the way, that is a great story. You know what I should have done tonight? I should have closed tonight by reading Chicken Little, because that is all about the fixing and helping response gone totally awire. It's homework for everybody. Go on YouTube, there's some lovely authors or lovely readers reading some lovely presentation of children's books with all of the wonderful illustrations, and read Chicken Little tonight. No, seriously, read it. See the pictures, go through, and then commit to yourself to say, I will not be one of those flock of birds in the world. That's it. That is it. Thank you, Sean, because that is the voice of helping and fixing. That is the movement of helping and fixing. So that's what I want to open it to. Because right now, when we look at the world as a whole, how do we serve? How do we serve at this time of this great existential turning, this great time where there is loss? There's rightfully should be tremendous grief. We are in an extinction period where habitat and creature has been lost, right? We are at a time of strife. We have a time of wicked dilemmas, competing optimums, and no easy way out. And yet Rachel Remen in her writing is saying there's this thing that arises called service. This is our koan tonight. Olga.
Hi. As you were talking, I was reminded of Braiding Sweetgrass. And in one of her chapters, she writes about how our gift is our responsibility, and asking what is our responsibility is the same thing as asking what is our gift. And Andy talked about this last week as well, I think, about his experience going to university and finding what his gift was. And I think that we can only serve best with our gifts, because that is what is given to us, and that is all that we can give in return. And Robin Wall-Kimmerer specifically writes about how gratitude, only humans have the capacity for gratitude, and that is a gift that is given to all of us. And that is how we serve best, through that gratitude. And we each have our own gifts in addition to that. But I think just being more grateful and being more aware of all that's around us is the way to start.
So what is your gift is a koan. What is the gift that you carry? What is the gift that you hold? What is the gift that you will birth into creation, just as you have been birthed into creation? But now that gift, but we already have things that help us not to go awry looking for that. Our gift is somehow related to this thing called health. If you think that you're going to try to find out to know what your gift is, and you're going to look through all of this knowing and all of this searching and all of this reading and all of this, just different ways of gathering knowledge to find out what your gift is, I suspect you won't find that. I suspect that's an inversion. I suspect you're going to have to do some actions in the world to find out how you have been gifted. And if you're looking for your gift in the wrong way, it's an inversion. You have to flip it around and find the way that we're meant to look for our gifts. And that's inevitably relationally, not objectively. It's a subjective affair among your fellow creatures. Right? So this idea of the gift is important. And the one last thing I'd speak to the gift is your gift is not for you. It never has been. Your gift is for everybody else and every living thing and everything else that is in that grand relationship, that grand web of this created and creative world that we live in, right? All our relations, this web of interdependency. And the nice, great thing is to remember then, if we're one of 7 billion people on the planet, there's over 606 billion, whatever, 99999, whatever many nines that is, that have their gifts just waiting to be there in service of you. If you find a place to create the space to receive them, nourish them, and help them come forward. I think that the notion of gifts and gratitude, and let's always remember though, when the minute gratitude comes in, let's always create space for grief, because those have a peculiar dance, gratitude and grief. That which comes into our life and that which leaves, that's which we attach to, and that's what we need to detach to. right? These are all expressions of love, right? And the gratitude is the one we often get pulled to more easily, but in grief is the one that's repellent. But I believe them to be in this beautiful dance that furthers our felt sense of this thing called life and love and all that goes with that. Service, the koan. How are you in service tonight? How are we in service to you? How are you moving in service as we speak?
It's funny. Much of what you guys were just talking about is kind of the stuff that I wrote down in thinking about this. The very first thing that I wrote down was about gifts and just thinking about what Bill was saying about serving, helping, and fixing, rather than being actions or statements of doing, that they are positions of relationship. They are ways of thinking about you and your relationships in the world. And gifts is sort of the same, the idea. It's not a physical thing. It's not a attribute that you have. It's not a characteristic. It's a recognition. It's an awareness. It's a sensibility. And then we often talk about sort of owning your gift or embodying your gift or letting your gift, serving the gifts that you have. And that process is not a cognitive process. It's not you can't think your way through that process. It is a doing, and the doing then in relationship brings forth the gift itself. Did I just pause? Okay. So anyway, so I was thinking about how, in terms of thinking about gifts, we can sort of think about our bodies or our relationships, our mind. But we can also think about the struggles that we have. Anything really can be part of the things that we carry. Our medicine bag, the tools that we bring with us in our life. And I was thinking about as a teacher, I think probably not too surprisingly, my most successful classes, my most successful experiences as a teacher have kind of started off with this idea that I'm telling the students I can't tell them where we are going in this process, and I can't tell them what to do, and I can't tell them how to get there. And I can't tell them why we're doing it. And that seems entirely counterintuitive, specifically as a teacher, where you think people come into the classroom and sit down and they would like you to tell them where we're going and how we're getting there and why we're doing it. That's what they're looking for. But I always found that starting from that position of I don't know any of the answers that you're looking for was always the most productive. And I guess part of it is thinking about, I'm borrowing this from some Buddhist thinking, but the idea that I am not my body, I am not my mind, I am not my emotions, I am not my thoughts, and I'm not even my actions. I am this web of relationships, this complex web of relationship of all of those parts. And it's those parts in interaction with the rest of life that births me, that gives me existence. And there's that's that really beautiful, mysterious, poetic nature of things. And I thought when I was thinking about this, how we often, specifically when we're talking about like stories and the stories of our lives, we forget the idea that that all stories need an antagonist and a protagonist. And the antagonist is literally the struggle, the conflict, the disease, the illness, the thought, the barrier, the mountain, whatever it is. And often in our process, we want to take people and take away their antagonist. We want to take away that part of their story. We want to take away their struggle to support them, to help them, without giving sort of due honor to that process that they're going through. And I thought about gratitude. The idea of letting me serve your gifts with my gifts, and how gratitude works in two ways. And I think I find it easy to be very grateful in my practice. I know Bill and I were recently doing some work with a woman who was having some shoulder issues. And she said afterwards, "Oh, thank you so much." And I said, "No, thank you. Like, thank you so much. Like, it's such an honor, it's such a pleasure to do that kind of work." But of course, part of it is that I also struggle with receiving gratitude, which is a really important part of that process. I'm letting you know that your gifts served me as well in that process, right? That it is reciprocal. And so being grateful for life is good, but also receiving gratitude from others is also really good, and something that we have to practice. And I just want to just tell a quick story. So one day I was starting class. It was a new semester, and I was about 5 or 6 minutes into this class, and a girl came in, and she was really loud, and she kind of slammed her books down, and I was talking. She didn't, ask permission or anything. She just came in, and she started talking immediately. She sat right in front, started immediately talking to somebody right beside her loudly. It was entirely disruptive and entirely dramatic, and and everything. And I said, out in the hall right now, I want to talk to you. And she got up, and I had no idea what I was going to say to this lady. And we walked out into the hall, and she said, "This is effing bullshit." And she was yelling at me, and she was so mad. And I looked at her and I said, "Are you sad?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm sad often. And I don't know, for some reason, I just got the feeling that you knew something about sadness, and you'd understand." And she was like completely off guard. And she said, "You have no idea how my story, like, I know so much sadness. I have so much trauma in my life." I said, "Oh, well, I thought so." I said, I figured. And I said, "I'd really appreciate it if during the course of the year, if we could talk sometimes just about it, because it would really help me." And she was like, "Yeah, of course, for sure. And I said, "Listen, if you ever need to leave my class because you're having a really stressful time or whatever, just give me one of these little hand signals, go take a walk around, and come back. And I know what it's like." And I said, "When you go and take those walks, you're taking me with you on it. So it'll be good for both of us." And she was like, "Yeah, I'll totally do that." And I said, "When I go back in now, I'm going to have to be kind of rough, because I want the students to really feel like, I have control in this classroom." And she was like, "Yeah, I totally understand." I was one of the few classes. She came every day afterwards on time, had a great semester, had tons of mental health problems, but came to my class, and more importantly, came to my class and talked to me on a regular basis, did the artwork, enjoyed the experience, and had a lot of fun. And I don't know, I really felt like there was nothing that I planned or nothing that really happened in that moment, except that I didn't try to fix the problem. And I didn't try to help her. I didn't say, "I'm going to help you. I'm going to fix anything," or "I'm going to, whatever." I just said, I'm available for service in this. And that made all the difference. And the reason she yelled at me when she went out in the hall, the reason she said, this is because she expected me to yell at her, to try to fix her, to try to correct her, to try to do whatever. So anyway, yeah, that's my story on that particular on that particular process, and some of the ways in which it's I've learned, and I think doctors and teachers are very good at coming into the idea of fixing and helping, and making that shift, that mental shift, to that I am serving something, and I don't know what that it is until it shows itself, is such an important concept. It's such an important idea, and also just trusting that it is actually going to show itself, that it will appear, that the moment will, if I put the water on the soil and the seeds there, something will sprout and my moss will appear and my necklace will be worn, and Ken Dryden will sign my shirt.
Perrin, is that
I
hand still?
Because we have a Ken Dryden shirt signed upstairs.
Perrin, is that hand still edging to speak?
Sure. Well, and now Andy has given me so many more things to respond to as well. So thank you for that. So yeah, I have a lot of things to say. I really liked the Rachel Remen quote, and I was actually thinking about exactly this. Incidentally, in reflecting on the conversation about and within, I was thinking about exactly this kind of point about sort of helping versus serving, so I'll talk about that a little bit. With respect to there was a politician, and I forget her name, but she was kind of talking about like when you're sort of working with kind of marginalized communities, there's kind of a difference between, again, sort of coming in from the inside out and trying to, as you say, sort of help them versus being kind of committed and embedded in sort of their struggle and what they're dealing with, and kind of going through it with them. And I think that, but then there's also a tension there, because I think, and I'm sort of saying this from the perspective of some of the work that I do in terms of like facilitating processes of kind of multi-stakeholder change. There's also a tension where I think in order to kind of play that role of service, like to be kind of supportive to a community at the same, like you can't necessarily be kind of emotionally attached so that you're kind of going through, kind of the ups and downs, or that, that you're kind of like drawn into the political debates at a personal level. I think that in order to kind of, be supportive, you sort of need to support yourself too, right? Like you need to, and so I think that's, kind of an interesting tension with sort of the about and the within. And I think that, the other thing that I would just, sort of note is that there tends to also be like this pathology where we kind of we problematize situations and put people in positions of helplessness such that we can be helpers, right? Like in cases where like we feel that that's, something that we want for ourselves as, sort of healers or teachers or whatever. And so I think that there's, kind of going to your question about, all of these kinds of world issues that we're dealing with respect to kind of like social injustice and sort of environmental decline. I think that, to that point, if we kind of applied, asset-based development, right, and you sort of, you kind of work with, as people are saying, kind of the gifts within the system, within the community, it's actually much easier to sort of shift the system than we think it is, right? Like a lot of the solutions are close at hand, except that we're, in a way, we over-diagnose the problem, right? And under acknowledge some of the solutions, right? And I think that kind of speaks also to, what Andy was saying about, the sort of the antagonist and the protagonist. I think, we're sort of, in a way, we're kind of attached to that, like to that narrative structure of having a struggle And in some cases, like we, in that respect, we create the struggle that doesn't actually exist, right? Like it doesn't necessarily need to be problematized as an issue as much as like something that is, maybe moving in a different direction. And I think I'll stop there.
I've got some sort of things to speak to a lot that people have said, but I want to make sure everybody that wants to jump in on this conversation has space and time.
Had an odd little experience recently, connected to the story of a protagonist and an antagonist. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. That's where I've met a bunch of friends in the time of the pandemic. That's how I met Aaron, who's attended a few of these calls. And of course, there's a lot of argument there. People like to set themselves up in opposition from each other. And I found recently that when I stumble across people arguing, I just don't know what they're saying anymore. The story of protagonism and antagonism, it doesn't make sense to me. There's something there that doesn't click. It doesn't seem human anymore. It doesn't seem like something that people would do by themselves. I'm not quite sure what to make of it.
Sorry, can I jump in? I just heard a funny clip today from the lead comedian from Monty Python. I can't remember his name right now.
John Cleese.
But he was John Cleese. But he was talking about extremism, and essentially how we create these enemies, which then give us our permission to treat people badly, or to feel badly about people, or to say bad things about them, because we create these polar positions. We create these opposites. And I think when I think of protagonist and antagonist, I do think of struggle, and I do think of we sort of classically in our stories we have the force of whatever that somebody has to overcome. But I also really think of it in terms of like I have the book beside me here somewhere. Differences, and just about how we know the world. So the story of the two fish sitting on the bench, and the older fish swims by and says, "Hey guys, how's the water?" And they fish just stare at him, and he swims away, and the one fish looks at the other and says, "What's water?" Right? Like if you've lived in something for so long, you don't know what it is, right? We know the world through difference. We know the world through contrast. We that's how we calibrate for things. And so often when I specifically when I'm referring to that antagonist protagonist relationship, I'm thinking about it in the way in which a difference makes sense, like how difference helps us to know and calibrate ourselves with the world. So just by talking about inversions, there's a pattern in front of me, and I now pay attention to that pattern, and I see that pattern in things, and I see the inversions in things. It gives me a frame in which for me to look at. But I also have all these other senses of my body, of my emotions and mind, and I feel these things, as Bill was saying at the beginning here, these things that rise up in me, these knowings that rise up in me, sensory or mental or embodied or whatever, that come because, just like before today's gathering, not knowing what to talk about tonight was creating stress for me. and stress and anxiety are sort of a great partnership in the teacher's life, that I going on stage every single day and performing. But rather than letting stress and anxiety be a protagonist, or let it be the antagonist in me that was just like that, I would, get rid of it. Rather than that, I was thinking about like, where did that come from? Where did that rise up? What was, how did I go from being calm to being stressed? And what was those differences? And what were those differences showing in me? Where was that? And where was that? Was because I was thinking about like, I don't know something and I have to fix that knowing, instead of, as Perrin was saying, like, it's okay just to show up as yourself. It's okay to show up with the gifts that you have. It's okay to show up with the resources that you have available to you. And specifically, it's okay to show up in a group like this who are going to provide all the dynamics for the conversation to occur the way it's going to occur. So yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to when I was thinking about that antagonist protagonist.
A few things just in terms of what people have shared so far. When Andy said that doctors and teachers, that we share this camaraderie, and it's funny because where we also share the camaraderie is with our we don't actually have a formal union, but we have a union-like body. And so we're always renegotiating with the government. So we're always great supporters of each other, like the government, in terms of it. But doctors and teachers, right, this notion of fixers and helpers. And it's true. I think that's predominantly where we have gotten stuck, is in these fixing and helping modes. But I don't want to say, but that's only half of a vicious circle, because patients and students love to be fixed and helped. And we are supporting each other in this oscillation of fixing and helping. And then we're both getting frustrated because we know that's not actually what we're wanting. The teachers and doctors know at some deep level, at least, those, some people do like it because it does give a sense of control and certainty and predictability, and right. Like those are all things that as human beings we treasure in a world that's ambiguous and uncertain and could change on a dime. Right. So I get why there's the draw to it, but it keeps us locked in this position that doesn't let us have a greater sense of health. And so I just always look for that circle, right? We're always looking to blame, those doctors, these doctors this day and age, they just don't understand, or those teachers, they're not. And then you recognize, no, you've got the exact doctor you want, and you got the exact teacher you want, because you're looking to be fixed and helped in those very ways. We're perfect matches. So somehow we have to escape that gravity together. And just to what Perrin was saying, I agree that, what you want to recognize is service is not a preset form. Right. She was hinting, I think, the idea is that, sometimes the service isn't to be caught up in the emotional empathy of a struggle or suffering of another group when we're called to be in service and in relationship with them, right? It might be to just hold a space. It might be to hold silence. It might be to hold that equanimity, or that place of just of centeredness and stillness, right? It might be to give, it might be to push, it might be all of these things. The thing about service is it's only right in the moment it's right, and then it's no longer service, right? So now service is something about aesthetic and beauty and emergence, right? Like it is finding the rightness of this living moment, which is dynamic and ever changing. It's Heraclitus's stream, right? I just want to share one little bit of this quote. So this whole helping, fixing, serving by Rachel Remen became my professional ethic. It's my constitution of being a physician. Like I refer back to this document often as a leading document, just like a country would have its constitution. But what was really personal for me in this was when she writes, we draw from all of our experiences. Our wounds serve, our limitations serves, and even our darkness serves. And that was the line that just broke me open. because I strove so long up until very recently to try to serve from places that were perfect and light and well fitted and well formed and strong and, had good presentation. Knowing all the while the dark blotches and stains of a life lived were building. The missteps, the regrets, the hurts, the harms, the unintended consequences, the mishaps, the randomness. And that was becoming a weighty thing on my soul. And this line of hers was a moment of release where I went, oh, I can accept that now, because it is actually a gift that if service chooses to use it, will. And it isn't what makes me broken. It actually what makes me fully whole. And so this is actually a very personal writing, sharing document. It actually allowed me to see myself in wholeness. Her great service to me in writing this, in her wholeness, from her brokenness, from her flawedness. She wrote in her book about, just the frustration. She has Crohn's and has had most of her colon taken out. This original thought of a body having betrayed her, right? And here she is reaching from those experiences and services, and then they touched me, right? And they realized, and I've shared this writing with a lot of patients, just as I shared it with you tonight. I think it's a very profound shifting, and it shifted me profoundly. And so I want you guys to know I'm not coming here talking about it. And this was an act of within when I received it the first time, right? So it is dear. It is what is allowed.
Can you read it again, Bill?
I can. Helping, fixing, serving. My flawedness, where'd my glasses go? There we go. I've got old eyes. First time I read this, I didn't need glasses. Service is not the same as helping. Helping is based on inequality. It is not a relationship between equals. When you help, you use your own strength to help someone with less strength. It is a one-up, one-down relationship. And people feel this inequality. When we help, we may inadvertently take away more than we give, diminishing the person's sense of self-worth and self-esteem. Now, when I help, I am very aware of my own strength. But we don't serve with our strength, we serve with ourselves. We draw from all our experience. Our wounds serve, our limitations serve, even our darkness serves. The wholeness in us serves the wholeness in others and the wholeness in life. Helping incurs debt. When you help someone, they owe you. But service is mutual. When I help, I have a feeling of satisfaction. But when I serve, I have a feeling of gratitude. Serving is also different to fixing. We fix broken pipes. We don't fix people. When I set about fixing another person, it's because I see them as broken. Fixing is a form of judgment that separates us from one another. It creates a distance. So fundamentally, helping, fixing, and serving are all ways of seeing life. When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. And when you serve, you see life as whole. When we serve in this way, we understand that this person's suffering is also my suffering, that their joy is my joy. And then the impulse to serve arises naturally. Our natural wisdom and compassion present itself quite simply. A server knows that they are being used and has the willingness to be used in the service of something greater. We may help or fix many things in our lives, but when we serve, we are always in the service of wholeness. Rachel Remen from the Zen Hospice website. We love to use our fancy words, and complexity is full of them, And I love those words. I love them. I love their meanings. I love their implications, and I love what they point to. And the early cyberneticians, the second order cyberneticians who Andy and I love so much, Bateson, Varela, and von Forrester. And soon I hope to have Gregory Bateson's brilliant daughter, Nora Bateson, on our podcast. They will speak of this term epistemology, how we know and how we know and we know, and the nature of our knowing. When you hear this word epistemology, don't let it be a big word that overwhelms you, or don't go to all the technical definitions. From now on, when you hear this word epistemology or this philosophical term of how we know or how we know, think of Rachel Remen's writing, helping, fixing, serving. It's all you need to know about how we know to be in the world. And you recognize epistemology as a choice. These are deep things, but this lens, this guide will help you through those deep things. To reference back to Ian McGilchrist last week, this is a lovely, again, part of the left hemisphere, right hemisphere, two brains, two worlds approach. By this point, fixing and serving, left hemisphere or right hemisphere. Remember, the left parses, makes lifeless, breaks up, breaks down, looks to manipulate, looks to grasp, looks to control. Between helping, fixing, serving, which of those ones fit in the left hemisphere?
Helping and fixing.
Helping and fixing, right?
Very left-brained.
Very left-brained. And you can see our addiction and how so deeply embroiled we are in that brains of seeing the world. If we're very honest, I mean, gosh, I have spent the majority of my life helping or fixing myself, helping or fixing those around me, or trying to help or fix the world, and then feeling broken and weak in all of that, The right brain, the right hemisphere, the world of completeness, wholeness, flow, the living, this moment, relationship, everything in its entirety, everything in relation to everything else, which is of the right mind. What is right-minded here? Well, it's obviously the serving mindset. So I want you to see how these different things, the cybernetic thinkers, what Bateson, Varela, von Forrester, Maturana, what they were pushing us to, what McGilchrist is pushing us to, right? This balancing, this coming back to the right, not at the expense of the less, but in balance and in the right imbricated, misted relationship, that the right births the left, and that our serving will wisely birth our action, what you could call a help or a fix, but in an appropriate, right, ordered way of a wisdom that's bigger than what our own small mind would say. Perrin, I see a hand there.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on, sort of your idea about, oscillating between fixing and helping, and just add to that about, like the idea that all of us at some point have probably been on both sides of the cycle of being both a teacher and a student, being both a healer and a patient. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, like we can think of these rules again, like not as, being, more knowledgeable or, sort of more in control or better than, as sort of a teacher or a healer than those who we are helping. I think there's sort of in those roles where, we're evoking healing when we're evoking learning. But I think, and also, in a way, relative to what I was saying before, kind of what you said, kind of holding a space or, being kind of, you're sort of being kind of the strong person in the relationship while letting the other person therefore be open and vulnerable, right? And so, and even to then, sort of to let yourself at some point be a student, right? Like be a learner, be open and vulnerable because there is someone there kind of holding a space for you to have uncertainty and to not be the one who needs to have like a direction or a clear direction, who is leading the group. I think there's something important in that. And then I think, and in that, then, I think, just, kind of commenting on what you were saying about like the serving through our limitations. I think that, I agree there's something really important in that, and sort of acknowledging then that, we're all kind of humans interacting with humans rather than, in these kind of perfect like institutional agents or perfect like kind of perfect professionals, kind of playing these roles in ways that are kind of controlled and predefined. And I think, if we let ourselves like understand that that there are these kinds of oscillations in our behaviors and that we are kind of imperfect humans, then it's actually easier, going back to what you were saying about, how do we fix the problems? It's easier to do that if we acknowledge the existence of that. It's easier to kind of address the gaps in the system if we understand, the behaviors, the oscillating behaviors underneath them.
I love what you said there about that we've all been on both sides. I had a very potent recent this year where I had some issues with my heart. I had atrial fibrillation, a cardiac arrhythmia. And it resulted in a trip to the emergency department and a night stay. And it actually resulted in me getting shocked, not because my heart stopped, but as a reboot to get the rhythm back on. So literally, like, what you see on TV, the whole boom, boom, and the drugs and all. And so it was a really interesting moment because the doctor came in, the anesthetist came in, and I didn't know her. It happened to my family doctor was on, but she came in as part of the procedure. And she asked me the same questions that I had asked, 100, if not 1,000 patients, and asked it in the same way. I could tell you, like a precognitively, I knew what was coming, And it was a really lovely moment because although she was asking it from the about position, just like not the within, just like I had, and she was asking it from a helping and fixing in our training, just like I had, I was able to receive it in service to myself, service to her, service to the moment. And I was very grateful she was asking it in the way she knew how to. It was actually a lovely moment. And, it's not to say it wasn't a difficult moment, but it was a humbling moment. And I was grateful. And, the one thing that as you were talking, Perrin, and this is where we bring it back to health broadly. The truth is, and we know this as teachers and as health workers and as parents and as kids, like so many things, helping and fixing is fucking exhausting. It's exhausting work. We will become exhausted. We will be exhausted by it. Just like the car exhaust is the product of the car's work, right? It's literally exhausting because we're working it. And it's tiring to receive it because we're being worked, in these mechanical ways. Service is exhilarating. It is invigorating. It is vitalizing. It is restful. It is all of those juxtapositions that we associate with the living. It's what we're actually looking for in health. It is creative. It is inspired. It is the inspired and expired of, in the natural sense that Numan was speaking of when he was on, So let's not exhaust ourselves anymore, right? Be in service to yourself. Don't be exhausting. Helping, fixing, helping her. How many people are like caught up in self-help groups, self-improvement, right? And then how we then be, helping everyone in our family, helping everybody in our community, fixing the problems. The minute you hear problem or solution, you're not in service. Those words don't go in the service mode. They have no place there. Can I just say one thing? Bayan, I just want to reach out and say hello. I haven't got a chance to say hi to you. I'm so glad to see your face in it. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just really just love to say, I'm glad that you found your way in to join us tonight. And I haven't had a chance to connect in that way. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying the conversations.
Great. And I love that. I hope you feel that. I actually feel the pull to reach out to you across this virtual divide. Like I feel the pull of all of you here tonight, and that's part of the tech. Remember my first thing, what is the texture of health? Well, right now I'm feeling the texture of health in how we're serving each other in this dialogue and conversation. Like I'm feeling that texture. It's textural, it's felt sensual, it's embodied.
Time for another poetic reading from members.
And yeah, let's have that as our wrap. I think we're feeling the wrap down. We'll have a chance to have a quick more go around for any last words, but let's bring this into the final phases of this evening.
Time is an ocean, present and eternal. We are adrift on that ocean of possibility, you and I. And the miracle is that we find each other at all. Maybe it's age that keeps me scanning the horizon, looking for you, waving, bobbing in that sustaining current, because I want to hold eternal moments closer now. We move through time and space separately, and the mystery of our meeting is time's gift to us. Swim with me now. We have no other chance.
That is just so wonderful, so perfect, so beautiful. Any last closing wishes of the heart before we wrap ourselves up?
Swim with me.
Perrin, swim with us one last time.
Okay, sorry, I have more things to say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Say it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, just thinking about this idea of service, I think, in a way, we almost need to kind of call each other into service as well, in a way that is, non-exploitational, not entitled, and also, kind of going back to kind of giving of ourselves without expectation, right? There's an element of it where, I think, the current, sort of structure of, job expectations doesn't necessarily evoke a service-based approach.
If you hear the word expectation, there's no service. Service expects nothing of us. It expects nothing of the other. It expects nothing of itself. Life lives to live. And so if you find yourself using those words, be aware, track this vocabulary, problems, solutions, expectations, intent, these things. You'll notice that those are the words of help. Those are the words of helping and fixing. The word of service is a different language. Helping and fixing has very pragmatic languaging. It loves bullet points. It loves point forms. Service is not prosaic. It is poetic. It is poetic in its silence. It is poetic in its movement. It is poetic in its dance. And we are all danced when that dance is dancing, and we will all feel the invigoration of it. Look at the languaging. You'll know which mode you're in by not only the words you choose, but how you tone them and intone them and recite them and say them and share them. Language should feel like we're giving each other a wonderful gift. It shouldn't feel like hard pellets of rain on a cold fall day. It should feel like gifting. And if your language doesn't feel like gifting, probably it's better that we learn to speak less. I feel compelled to... sorry, go ahead, Andy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as an artist, I think about works of art in whatever form they come as a work of art serves the most complex sense of what it means to be alive, to be human, and to be alive. I think that. And I think if I knew how to make a great work of art, I would just keep making great works of art. A friend of mine recently, I was talking to him, and he was listening to Paul Simon, and Paul Simon said when he wrote Bridge Over Troubled Water that as soon as he finished it, he said, "Well, that's a great song." He knew it when he heard it, and he knew that it was different, and he knew how it was, something that doesn't come along very often. And I think one of the things that's so difficult when we're talking about all of this is that there isn't instructions that we can give each other. That we just have to keep diving in to the current and waiting for those moments to show themselves. And some of those moments will be great, and some of those moments will not be great, or they'll be just learning moments, or they'll be, as you said, Bill, like these moments of our own personal struggle that we have no idea whether they will be gifts for us that we can use later on, or that will be part of our own our art kit or tool kit or medicine bag until later. But I've just again struck by that, how all the training in the world doesn't prepare you for how to do this. We follow along by those feelings, but yet I think, to add to our inspires, I think it is important for us to all aspire to that greatness.
Well, yeah, let us aspire to it. Let us aspire and aspire and spiral. And again, these textural terms of movement. What is a spiral? It's not a static thing. It's a living movement, maybe caught in a moment of time. But, when we aspire and inspire, and someday we will expire as we're bounded by all of these things. So let's take the spiral path forward and eschew straight lines. And, again, the point of a koan, right, is we hold these questions. We hold the question, and it gives us answers and answers and answers, ever changing, ever dynamic as the moment changes. And mine in the beginning, what is the texture of health? And as we're coming here to the end, I find myself in this texture. It's immersive. And I am in love. I am in love in this moment. I feel my heart opening. I feel myself softening. And I have no other word for it other than the texture of love, and I invite you all to just look and see which texture you're in, which color you're in, which stone you hold and want to wear around your neck, which seeds you wish to plant, which connections you wish to make, however you want, whatever moods that you want to jump in to see which modes of expression that they bring forward. That we find that way in all of our being and the holding of those questions in koans, and to recognize they're all shared. Let that guide you, through this evening, through these days, through these weeks. And I look forward to when we gather again as a community here in this wonderful room, in this wonderful space. Last words.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things.
There's a few words still. Yeah. Let the ripples ripple.
Have faith. Take faith. Give faith.
I can find my home in that.
Yeah, faith. Yeah, faith was the word I was looking for.
Michael, your last stirrings.
Okay, I think I'm on now. There's a poem called Corona Radiata, and is written by a Dr. Faudi Judah. He talks about the horrors of the virus, but there's one stanza, if you don't mind me reading it. It's very brief, but it's extremely hopeful and inspiring. And he fully recognizes the horrors of the virus, but he does say this: the virus teaches us with the bliss to come after detention is served, to hold the estranged, to touch strangers, an ecstasy worth waiting for.
Oh, that's beautiful, Michael. well chosen, well read. I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that up and down. And that's medicine from a doctor on the front lines, taking this COVID experience, taking it in the service as he's received it and transforming and transmuting it and bringing it forth in the service of spoken poetic word. Lovely. Olga, earlier your lips were moving with a poetic tremble, but no words were yet coming forward. Do you have a last thing to share with us? Oh, you're on mute. No, you're not on mute, but we're not hearing you. You might have to pantomime the poem for us. All we'll have is all we'll have is your expression, but without words. Go ahead, tell us the poem you were going to tell us, and we'll feel the words. We'll make room for your silence right now. Oh, beautiful. And the beautiful mint plant, its own poetry coming forward. Are the leaves of new plants. All right.
I think that's strawberries.
Strawberries. No, it's like, you guys know nothing about plants. They're green, not blue, not turquoise. All right. Anybody else? Are we good? Sometimes saying goodbye and good night. Yes,
question for Andrew. What was that book, the name of the book, of the poetry book that you were reading from?
It's Richard Wegemis, Embers. It's a beautiful book.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And when I was talking about difference, it was from, of course, Gregory Bateson, Mind and Nature.
Yeah, we do hope to put a book list together that, of essential touchstones at some point. And with that is on the list. All right, guys, I think then we're going to wrap it up there. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Again, don't come alone. Bring a friend, bring an enemy, bring your neighbor, bring your mother. I love when the parents show up. That's always great. And, and remember, the service is the strength of the web of relations, right? That is the strength of the service, right? We don't carry it alone. Okay, good. We'll leave it there. Thank you all. Happy Easter coming into the weekend. And I will see you and talk to you in 2 weeks' time. And as always, feel free to stay around.